us already, go to YouTube/On The Mic or Facebook On The Mic. Hey, you can listen as well, you know. You can listen on Spotify and iTunes. Or if you like the show, go to our Patreon page. You get a little bit of extra content there, and you can make a cheeky donation. It can be $1, or if you're married to a wealthy Arab oil billionaire, hey, donate a little bit more. Patreon.com/On The Mic. Now, my guest today, 3 facts about her. She is the political editor of the Daily Telegraph here in Australia. She's won Walkley Awards. She was a cheerleader at university, and she once bought a homeless man a whole stack of new clothes. His name was Michael. Her name is Sharri Markson, and welcome to On The Mic.
How fun. Thanks for having me here, Mike.
I'm so
excited.
excited.
What an introduction as well.
So excited to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Been following your awesome career for a while, winning awards and, sticking sticks of dynamite up politicians' asses and exploding them. Well, apparently that's what Bill Shorten said. You were the dynamite in the government's ass.
Well, I think that was Kevin Rudd when he was Prime Minister about a decade ago. Yeah.
He probably said it in Chinese too, so you wouldn't be able to write about it.
Yeah, probably. No, I think Bill Shorten's, dreading if he gets into government, which is looking likely at this point.
Really? I saw a poll today. It looked like he dropped a fair bit, probably because of the last few headlines on the Daily Telegraph.
Yeah, possibly. Look, yeah, the government has bounced in the polls today. Turnbull's preferred Prime Minister rating is up off the back of a positive budget, which is very rare.
Well, it's his money well spent, isn't it?
It is. It's been a long time since people, actually changed their votes because of a budget, but that just shows how popular this budget was, and they made no tricky decisions. It was just all tax cuts and nothing negative.
Of course, anyone anywhere in the world is happy when a government makes tax cuts.
Exactly.
Speaking of governments all over the world, Hillary Clinton tried to be the president of the USA, first female president of the USA. You're hanging out with her last week, sort of.
We did. We went and saw her on Friday night along with thousands of other people in Sydney. But look, I think she hasn't quite let go of her election loss yet. There was still a lot of resentment towards Trump, towards Russia, and towards social media companies like Facebook and the traditional media. She gave a bit of blame to all of them for.
Did she blame herself at all?
Look, she didn't discuss that publicly. I'm sure she would have her
so
own
nothing to do with her
regrets.
at all? Nothing to do with the fact that she wasn't healthy? Nothing to do with all of these horrible things you see floating around the internet, which you could probably call fake news, like the Clinton death list and Bill Clinton's a rapist and all the horrible things that she's apparently done? Yeah. I don't know what to believe anymore because there's so much crap out there online about Hillary Clinton. What's true and what's not?
That's absolutely. There's so much fake news. I think that death list is extraordinary. You read the conspiracy theories about it and God, it's pretty insane.
You can go down a rabbit hole with the Clintons in a big way.
Yeah.
I mean, even in Australia, we gave them like $13 million or something when she came out here, when she was Secretary of State. We're supposed to go to Haiti and the Clinton Foundation. They apparently can't go to Haiti, the Clintons, because they'll get murdered. This is what I'm reading.
Wow.
Is this true? Is this fake news? Is this another fake news channel?
I don't know the exact figures, but we do give millions and millions in aid funding to the Clinton Foundation.
Still?
We still do, yeah, which has come under a lot of criticism, and Julie Bishop as foreign ministers had to defend that. But look, she did. She blamed the traditional media for failing to hold Trump to account properly. Yeah. She blamed the Russians for their interference, and obviously the investigation into that is still going on in the US.
Like the US government's never interfered in any other government anywhere around the world, or even the Australian government for that matter.
Well, this is pretty blatant, though. Yeah. Russia had agents in the US that were creating fake news and disseminating it. Like, it was pretty strong.
So they wanted Trump to win. Because they thought Trump was just fuck up, and they thought this will be great to watch. This will make it hard for America to get ahead.
Well, I think even Trump and his family were shocked when he won. Like, it was just such a global
think he was shocked?
He was.
He was pretty cocky all the way, making out like he thought he'd win.
But on the election night, do you remember when he walked out there to give his victory speech? You could just see he was shell shocked.
Like a deer in the headlights.
It came out in Michael Wolff's book as well. I mean, you can't believe everything in
that book.
That's
a crock of shit. I mean, I flicked through a few pages of that, and I read a lot of online articles about some of the things that guy was saying. Saying he was hanging out in the Oval Office of the White House and he heard all that stuff. And Trump said he never remembered him being invited in there. So
he had some amazing access, and there were dinners he had at his house with some of, Steve Bannon and some of Trump's key players. So he did have incredible access. But what made me query it a lot was when he did that interview on the Today Show with Ben Fordham.
Yeah.
And Ben started asking him a tricky question about, whether he'd like to apologize to Trump. And Michael Wolff started going, I'm not sure I can hear this one. I think I'm losing the volume. I can't hear it. And then suddenly he got up and left the set, and Ben Fordham then played the audio of what Michael Wolff was receiving, and he could hear it perfectly.
He could hear everything.
So you think if he can lie in that context, then it does,
Tell you what, he's made a lot of money though, hasn't he? Like, that book's sold a lot of copies.
Amazing read. There would be a lot in it that is true. It's just a matter of taking it with a pinch of salt. But bestseller right around the world. Really, and hopefully there'll be more journalists who go behind the scenes of the White House to report on what's going on, because this is the most fascinating presidency we've ever had. I mean, every morning you kind of get a shock with what the president has tweeted overnight. Like last night, it was about getting more jobs for Chinese companies, which is a change in tune for him. So it's quite remarkable.
Don't you think it's good though that he doesn't go through the usual government channels and he just goes, I'm thinking of doing this, I'm going to tell the American people straight away. So that you have that direct contact with the head of the chopping block. And I think a lot of Americans and a lot of Australians, if someone came along and just didn't crap on with the usual political rhetoric that we have to put up with and just said it like it was. I mean, you must get so frustrated when you're speaking to politicians and they can't give you a proper answer. You just want a yes or a no, or you want a definite action at what they're going to take. And, I'm going to have to talk to my constituents and we have done this. And then all of a sudden they're talking about something that has nothing to do with the question that you've just given them.
Yeah, but look, politicians are the hardest people to interview because every morning, I don't know if you know this, but every morning the Prime Minister's office sends out talking points on any particular topic.
Yeah.
So any politician that day, they have to stick to those talking points.
It's ridiculous.
Those messages.
Can we do an example of that right now? Okay, let's
go.
pretend your talking point is education and I'm asking you about defence. So is there any reason why we're spending so much on our defence budget, and will it be more than $1 billion this year?
Look, it all comes down to putting children through school to making sure they have good literacy and numeracy levels when they go out into the workforce.
Am I going crazy? It seriously must mess with your head.
I mean, you can listen to it. You can hear it yourself when you watch, Lee Sales trying to interview someone, and she'll go, look, I'm going to ask you this for the third time, and then she just has to let it go because how many times can you repeat the same question?
But the general public aren't that stupid. They see that. They see a journalist asking a question and they want an answer, and if they see a politician just beat around the bush like that, they think that politician just thinks that we're all idiots.
Well, they only see it for television and radio interviews. I mean, I'm a newspaper journalist, and so
that's hard for you.
And so the public don't see that. So you could be asking questions of someone for months and months, and you don't get an answer, and it's incredibly frustrating. But I think the power of the pen wins out ultimately.
Yeah, well, the next book I'm looking forward to is from a well-respected journalist by the name of Stormy Daniels, and I believe she's doing a book tour in Australia.
Did you see her comedy skit the other night?
Oh yeah, on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yeah, but what the hell? How is this happening? Like, Trump had a nookie behind his wife's back, and it looks like he's paid her off to shut up, and she's gone, you know what? I'm going to have too much fun by being on Saturday Night Live and becoming an international celebrity, and maybe helping my porn career a little bit more.
It's just unbelievable, and it looks like there's a couple of women. These stories started to come out during the election campaign. Actually, the Wall Street Journal, which isn't into celebrity gossip or that sort of news. It's a very respectable news publication.
Yeah.
It did some of the initial reporting on it, and then a bloke called, I think it's Rowan Farrow. He's Mia Farrow and Woody Allen's son.
Oh yeah,
He really has lifted the lid on this whole story, and it looks like there's a couple of women who, Trump has paid off to keep quiet about affairs while he was with Melania. And how much she just doesn't look like she's loving this job at the moment, does she?
She hates it.
You never see her with a smile on her face.
Did you see when he was getting off the presidential chopper and he went to hold hands with her and she smacked his hand out of the way?
Yeah.
The fights that they must have. We're going to see a movie in a few years' time. But for the real Trump fans, a lot of people are saying, a lot of real Trump fans, they're harping on about this being the best president ever, saying the economy's up, people in America are spending, unemployment is down, and there's so many good things going for Trump, even though there's so many bad things personality-wise. He could be the best president.
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, and this isn't just his fans. This is President Moon from South Korea saying, he could get the Nobel Peace Prize because he's helped broker a peace deal between North and South Korea. I mean, it's been, his great-grandfather and his own dad haven't stepped foot in South Korea in their whole lives, let alone for it to happen now.
This is what makes the Trump presidency, I think, so difficult and almost impossible for the media to cover, because on the one hand you do have this very sexist, clearly sexist, objectionable character who is has said to female journalists when they've put hard questions to them, Megyn Kelly, he said, "Oh, you must be on your period." It's
pretty messed up.
It's really a very sexist character who's pays off, has affairs on his wife with porn stars, pays them off. Objectionable. On the other, and also very impetuous and emotional, and tweets immediately, this Twitter diplomacy. But then on the other hand, there is a strong argument that he has the negotiations with North Korea and South Korea, although we don't know where they'll end up yet. Look, trade, not great for the rest of the world, but from America's perspective, scrapping the TPP deals that have had unfair terms, has been good for the US economy, and already some of the car companies like Chrysler are coming back in. You mentioned, what was the other thing you mentioned?
I don't know.
The economy. The economy. He introduced tax cuts. We can't get business tax cuts through in Australia.
Yeah, right.
And so the markets responded really well to that, and that will encourage jobs growth as well. Also pulling out of the Iran deal. Yeah,
what's the go with the Iran deal? I mean, it was a shit deal anyway. I mean, Kerry and Obama looked like, from what I could see, just tried to put it through for their legacy. And there were certain terms in this Iran deal, like they weren't allowed to look at military installations
sites,
and weren't allowed to look in certain warehouses. That's like the police saying to a drug dealer, "Can we search your house but not look in the fridge?"
Yeah. Look, I guess it depends which way you look at it. On the one hand, it's better to be at least negotiating with Iran and have a presence there to try and keep them in check. On the other hand, you're right, they weren't allowed to inspect military sites. So it wasn't a proper inspection deal, and we know that there's a very close relationship between Iran and North Korea in terms of sharing of technology for the development of nuclear weapons. So I don't know what
throw a wedge between that deal when Trump has the meeting. I think they're meeting in Singapore.
It's soon. I'm not sure exact date, but
real
it's
soon. I mean, who knows what's going to come of that? But I mean, all the knockers that were saying, there's no way in the world it's going to work with Trump and North Korea, he's going to cause World War III. Those same people, even though the deal's being done, are saying the same thing about Iran.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just the way he handles those kind of deals. He goes in saying, "I don't give a stuff, it's my way or the highway." And then he goes, "You know what, okay, let's have a talk."
It's a very interesting negotiating tactic, and Hillary Clinton actually was asked about it by Julie Gillard on Friday night, and she said that sort of unpredictability can work, but you've got to be very careful with it. But look, it seems to be working, because there is this sense that he could just, launch military strikes whenever he wants, which he has done. I mean, he did in Afghanistan, and he did in Syria when Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his civilians. So he has shown that he can use force, without very quickly. He makes quick decisions about that. So perhaps it will work. I mean, the Israel decision's another one that's been very controversial, and we'll see. We have to see how that will play out. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and that's happening.
Well, I love. Trump was talking the other day about how he got a bill for $1 billion for the new embassy. And then he made a few phone calls and he got it for $150,000.
Amazing.
Like, what the hell?
Amazing.
So, but I don't know. I mean,
he still hasn't built the wall yet. That's his constituency wants to see that happen.
Did you see he had like a setup of, it looked like an IKEA for walls. and it was like there's 20 walls, like different walls. And he had a tour and he was just like checking them out and deciding which walls that he wanted to put up. The thing with the wall is, I mean, it's a massive border there. They physically can't do it over some of those mountain ranges. So it's just a thing to make people feel comfortable and secure about their country.
Yeah, and there's tunnels and plains as well. So it's, it was just a great line. But I think people who voted for him genuinely want there to be a wall. So I think he's going to have to build something. Otherwise, it'll be a huge broken promise.
So if you ever got to interview Donald Trump, what would be the first thing you'd ask him? And what direction would you go in the interview?
Well, I've been in 2 press conferences with him.
Oh, yeah, so you fired off a couple of questions.
So yelled some questions at him, but the problem is that, you're there with the US press gallery, the White House press gallery as well, and then some key people from the Australian press gallery. So everyone's kind of firing the questions at the same time, and it's just this wall of noise. So he didn't answer anything. And one was at APEC in November, and then the other one in the Philippines, and then about a year ago in New York when Turnbull first went over to meet with him.
What's it like being in that room at the White House, trying to ask all those questions in that barrage of political commentators and journalists? Is it like just a media scrum and you have to just elbow people out of the way to get your question in?
It is intense. So you have to line up outside the room first, and they set up Turnbull and Trump. They set them up in, nice armchairs next to each other to have the nice photo opportunity. And then they open the doors, and it's just like this rush. And everyone's, they are. I literally had to squish my way to the front, because if you're not at the front and you're like my height, you're not going to get a question in.
Bite people on the leg. Do you elbow anyone or push anyone?
I just kind of rush through. I don't know about pushing them, but they're all like big camera blokes. I'm kind of short and female, so you just got to get in there and go. The American media were quite aggressive, though. Even though they cover him all the time, I don't know why they'd be so excited to cover a Turnbull and Trump press conference. But I guess they're probably selling it to other media outlets back in Australia. They're covering it for their own, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, all that sort of, those New York Times, those. But they try and get other questions in there when it comes to the press conference. They don't care about the Australia relationship. They want to ask him about the latest scandal.
So you've had a few awards. You've a Walkley Award, nominated for a hell of a lot of other awards as well. I could probably list them off right now. Incredible headlines, like just this week, I think Bill Shorten with egg on his face. Yeah,
that was about the citizenship crisis, because he told us for months none of his MPs had problems, and then suddenly 5 of them were out for being dual citizens. So I
love that. It's hilarious. It's on the screen right now. So
we put egg on his face.
What are some other headlines? You've gone a little bit more full on over the last year. I think they're letting you have more of a say as to what you put on the front page of the paper, and that's probably why the readership's gone up in Australia for the Daily Telegraph.
I don't know about that.
Some people attribute it to you. I know your mum does.
My mum's very sweet. No, the Daily Telly's awesome. We have great stories every day, whether they politics or in other areas. But we do cover federal politics a lot. Obviously, I had the Barnaby Joyce story in February, which was very big, and the rest of the...
Yeah. So for those people who don't know, we have this politician in Australia who's all about family values and quite religious, and he's a country bloke, and he's also down to earth. But it turns out he was boofing his secretary, and she was up the duff. If you don't know what boofing or up the duff means, he stooped her. She got pregnant.
They just had a baby as well.
But it turns out, is it his?
Well, he now says it was his,
But there's a while there where he said, I don't think it's mine.
It was very odd. So he initially said it was, and then he went, paternity is a bit of a grey area. And now he said that, the timing of the birth has erased any doubts in his mind. So
you broke the story.
Bizarre.
And were you feeling like maybe I should leave this alone at any stage?
No. No.
You thought this is the best story ever? Or?
Well, not about the best story ever, but I thought it was, as you say, Barnaby
you copped a lot of flack.
A lot. He was the deputy prime minister. He had fought very hard against same-sex marriage in Australia. Had fought even against the Gardasil cancer vaccine, because he said that might make women more promiscuous. As you say, very strong Catholic social family values. So we at the Telly thought it was relevant that he was not only had an affair with his media advisor, but had got her pregnant. But look, he had 4 daughters, grown-up daughters, and late teens and early 20s, and he was married for 24 years. So this broke apart the entire marriage, and now they've just had a baby. So they seem very happy together. We photographed
until the
them.
next media advisor comes along.
Well, I don't know. Let's hope not. Let's hope this is the last one.
So does he see you in the media scrum at Parliament House, and does he give you evil looks? Or?
We kind of say an awkward hi if we walk past each other.
Awkward hi? He says hello to you?
Yeah, he still says hi if we walk past each other in Parliament House, because it's kind of a small place, and when Parliament's sitting, you're all in there together. The press gallery is based there, or the journos or the politicians. So
it's a very cutthroat industry. My stepdad, who's not around anymore, David Jull, he was a federal member of parliament for 30 years.
Yeah.
And he was the head overseer for ASIO. He was running tourism, aviation. He was credited for wrapping up the Department of Administrative Services and making it save a lot of money and outsourcing a lot of the government's jobs. But John Howard was a complete prick to him and ended up blaming him for a lot of stuff that other politicians
was he in the Liberal team?
Yeah, in the Liberal team. Yeah.
His role as doing oversight of ASIO would have been fascinating.
Oh yeah, if you had one too many Bundy rums on a Saturday night, some of the stuff that he would tell me, and I can say this because he's not around anymore. Like they'd have this laser that they could fire through a window. Just off a gun sight, and they could listen to what was actually going on. In the James Bond movie Quantum of Solace, he actually does that. But he told me about that in the 90s, and he said even back in the early 90s, late 80s, they could read a street sign from space.
That is
and a lot of the technology that ASIO use for spying is apparently just stuff that they put together from Tandy.
That is incredible. I've read some of not all of them, but some of the volumes of ASIO, and it was quite a bungled organisation initially, and they didn't know how to handle the onslaught of Russian spies here during the Cold War, and then they managed to get their act together.
Have you heard about their program called Dictionary?
No.
This is something I wasn't supposed to know either.
Yeah.
So, because we have the Five Eyes, so it's all these governments.
Canada, New Zealand, United States, Australia.
And they basically, it's an agreement to share information. And one of the programs that was developed in the UK and Australia was called Dictionary.
Yeah.
And back when everyone was using faxes, it scanned faxes, it scanned phone calls, it scanned every sort of communication that we had in this country and other countries wherever they could. And it would pick out words like bomb and terrorist and jihad. And they'd have rooms full of people that just sit there and just listen to these calls and bing, got one, and they have to go to the front of the class, and then everyone would listen to it.
Wow.
I probably gonna have this taken down off YouTube for saying that, but
that technology is probably updated now, and it just automatically picks up the chatter
and scanning your brain. Now.
I wish they were doing that. But the problem is, which is why they haven't picked up on some of the terror plots, as why Australian intelligence agencies haven't, because all the terrorists are now using encrypted apps. So they're not same with criminals. They're not texting or using phone calls, and it's almost impossible to crack those encrypted apps.
Like WhatsApp, apparently you can hack into. That's a Facebook-owned app as well, I think. But the Russians apparently use Telegram. Yeah,
Telegram's big, and there's another one called Signal that's big.
What do you use?
I use all of them because different contacts are on all of them. I know.
People send you a message and it comes up in your notifications.
And you got to work out, check them all.
Was it Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest? Where the fuck did that message come from? It's so annoying. But what I was getting to about,
Dictionary.
My stepdad working in politics for so long, and this is some crazy shit that he told me over the years. But being a journalist and interviewing politicians, like I see you on Q&A and morning show and all these different Today Show and whatever, and you cop a lot of flack from other journalists and like a lot of people on Twitter as well might troll you a little bit more often than your average person because you're saying things that can be quite polarizing and opinionated. How do you deal with all of that shit that you have to go through?
Well, look, when it comes to the actual politics, I try to be extremely objective and fair to both sides because I think that's really important. In this age where there's so much bias and fake news, you just want people to be able to get the facts of what's going on, but then explaining the story in an entertaining way. But when it comes to what we've decided to publish, I guess there was a lot of criticism over, say, the Barnaby Joyce story because that wasn't something that has usually been covered in the press gallery. Laurie Oakes, exposed Gareth Evans and Cheryl Kernow's affair, but kind of after a period of 6 or 7 years, and only after it wasn't told properly in a book. And so I guess it's kind of that grey area. And social media is just. Are you on Twitter? Yeah, it's just some of the things that people say. It's a mess there.
You just say something nice to someone, and there's always someone will pop up and say wanker or good head mate or whatever. People are just ridiculous at things. They say,
I've just got a blocking troll policy. And you can see how many people you've blocked if you go into the settings.
How many you've blocked?
I've blocked about 800 people. So I just think you shouldn't have to see.
When you get to 1,000, you throw a party and invite them all.
I just think you shouldn't have to see the abuse every day. But, you shouldn't have to get off Twitter either. Like some journalists just, or others just go off social media. But I don't reckon that's the answer.
How is it being a woman journalist as opposed to being a man? Do we have the equality thing sorted out now? Are you all getting paid the same now?
Look, it feels completely the same to me. I don't feel any, sexism or anything different because I'm a woman. I don't know what about the pay difference. I mean, you never really speak about your pay with your colleagues or your rivals. So I have no idea. But look, I think it's pretty good in the media industry. There's a lot of female political journalists around and who've been around for a long time. So I think we're.
But what do you think of the gender pay gap thing? Is that an actual thing?
Generally speaking, that it is, and it is terrible. And you just have to look at the statistics. They're published online by the, I think it's the Office of Women Department, and it's been about 17%. And the problem is that there's a lot of women in the more junior levels, and then they go off to have children, and then companies don't.
That brings the averages down.
Yeah, because companies don't then re-employ them at a senior level, and the men get ahead. And I think there's also a problem where men in senior positions, when they're choosing, to hire people, maybe they're vice president or they're deputy, or they're used to hiring people who kind of look like them and act like them, as opposed to.
It's changing though, yeah.
Look, I don't think the gender pay gap's improved broadly, not in the media, but broadly. I don't think that is getting better.
Can you explain that? Because, it is illegal to, for a nurse, for example, to hire a woman nurse and a man nurse and go, he's a man, we're going to pay him more.
Yeah.
But where is the gender pay gap happening? What industries is it happening more in?
It's a lot of companies, it's finance, it's finance, construction, property, just any.
So if you
kind
said
of
finance,
corporate,
construction, and property, so in finance, like
any
is it
corporate
Gail
role.
or whatever her name is the head of Westpac? I mean, she's obviously been paid by more. Well, she was, but she would have been paid more than everyone there because she knew the job better and did better than everyone. So.
But just look at any company, pretty much, and think of its top structure, and it's mostly men.
Yeah.
It's just, we can name on, two hands the number of female CEOs in this country.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I mentioned Gail. She's probably doesn't even do the job anymore.
Yeah, no,
Is it the CEO of Google? That's a woman, isn't it?
She just left. It was May Carnegie, and now she's gone off to head Ram's finance company.
Well, what's the answer? How do we address the problem? Just keep reporting on it and hope that attitudes change?
No, I think it won't change until there's equal parenting, until it's just as normal for a man to take paternity leave as for a woman, because that's where the problem is.
Yeah.
Because the women, as I said before, they get out and then they don't come back in at a senior level. So unless women can continue their career and some men stay at home.
Yeah, some countries they actually give the husband and the wife, if they're having a kid, 6 months off, and I think it was Holland or somewhere like that. I mean, I'm not sure, but we need to adjust the policies with our government so we can let the man stay at home and get paid as well. Yeah,
a lot of companies in Australia only offer maternity leave and not paternity leave, but it's also social expectations. I mean, you must know amongst your friends. I mean, like. Speaking seriously, you wouldn't have a lot of male friends who would be happy to go, I'm a stay-at-home dad and let their wife go to
actually,
work.
You know what? In the voiceover industry, most of them are bludgers and they do because of technology, they can do their work from home. And I think that's happening more and more in this day and age where people can get on Skype and have a phone call with their boss, a Skype call with their boss and do their work from home and look after the kid as well. So in my line of work, but I do have a lot of friends who would be like, there's no way that I could do that because they're the main breadwinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, recently at the Cannes Film Festival, there's a big hashtag #MeToo protest. Do you think the whole hashtag #MeToo thing is going a little bit too far, or do we need to be even bigger on it?
I think it's been a really positive movement. I think it has been quite lackluster in Australia.
Yeah. There's a few TV reporters that are going around doing this show around Australia, female TV reporters who have, I think it was Jessica Rowe or someone like that, saying that it hasn't gone far enough.
Yeah, I really don't think it has in Australia, and I've done some kind of background work in this area that I haven't published it or anything, and I know that speaking to women who have had experiences, they won't come forward. They just won't. Australian women. So I think, in the States,
fear of never being able to get hired again?
They won't. Yeah, they're worried about future employment, and also they're not empowered here like they have been in the States. So we have such a long way to go. There are so many women in Australia who've had problems, but you try and get them to speak and they won't, and it's really frustrating because from a journalist perspective, trying to tell the story makes it impossible for those stories to be told. So
you ever had to deal with that?
Well, yeah, as I said, I've been working on something that hasn't been published yet.
So this is actually about you, this story?
No, not about me. Nothing's happened to me. No, nothing. Okay. As in, I've been trying to encourage other women, to coax other women to tell their stories.
Yeah, right.
And, there's just this refusal to go public, refusal to speak about it, even though it's been so traumatic for them. Yeah. So I think that sense of empowerment hasn't come here yet, like, the way it has hit Hollywood. And
it's
also,
hit Hollywood in a big way, that it hasn't.
Massive.
And the casting couch is dead.
Yeah, well, hopefully. But I think the other problem with the movement is it's been very elitist. It's been to celebrities, what's happened to celebrities. It hasn't gone into regular workplaces to help regular women.
Yeah.
So
like the average, like a girl working in a hospital or something like that, a nurse, and hassled by a doctor, they'll just deal with it internally. Whereas maybe a big newspaper's not going to want to write a front page story about it, whereas they would a politician.
Yeah, well, I mean, we might do a story in it, but, you don't really hear those stories, whereas a celebrity just has to put it up on their Instagram or Twitter and the whole world knows about it. But yeah.
What are you scared about in the world today? I mean, you're someone who, you're the political editor of the Daily Telegraph. You're interviewing some of the biggest political minds in the world. What freaks you out? Is it North Korea? Is it Russia? Is it Donald Trump? Is it... the hashtag Me Too, the gender pay gap. What is something that when you wake up in the morning, you think, this really needs a story. We need to work on this more. It's
a very good question and hard to come up with an on-the-spot answer to it, but I can give you a couple of my early thoughts.
Yeah.
I think democracy is a big issue, both in terms of kind of influence of the political process from
lobbyists.
Oh, well, yes, there's lobbyists, but also from, Russia and China. China's been the case in Australia. But also with democracy, equally important is the fact that people don't want to pay for news anymore. They're used to getting their news online for free. Yeah. They aren't buying newspapers as much as they used to. And so there are fewer and fewer investigative journalists at each publication. And that's, over time, will be a serious hit to democracy. And it's not just that. I think it's the younger generation aren't interested in news.
They don't care.
They think news is, the photo their friend put up on the weekend on Instagram. So they just are becoming so insular and selfish.
Where are the new politicians going to come from?
Self-obsessed, and they're just not interested in the world around them. I think
it's
that's
all
a
been
huge
done
problem.
For them.
Yeah. Well, maybe they've got nothing left to fight for, but, they shouldn't be so inward looking. What's happening in the world is important. So I think that threat to democracy through the various things, coverage of news, journalism and foreign agents. Also, terrorism is still a worry. Like, I don't know about you, but we are very trusting in Australia.
Yep.
That last terror plot, on the... was it Etihad or Emirates? I've just forgotten the second. The flight to the Middle East.
Yeah, one of the Arabian airlines.
We were not going to pick that up. That was only detected because of Israeli intelligence, based in the Middle East.
What?
It was so close to being, and I've had the most senior counterintelligence and police officials tell me this. It was so close to being our version of 9/11, where a plane went down with 300 people. It was so close. We would not have detected it. The Five Eyes intelligence US hadn't. It was Israeli intelligence.
How does it go under the radar, something like that?
Because, as I say, they're using encrypted apps. You can't pick up that chatter.
And they're not necessarily always talking on apps or email or whatever. They just have their meetings, their secret meetings in wherever they might do it. If it's a dodgy mosque or whatever. There's
that as well. So I think terrorism is a concern. I mean, they say the threat level at the moment is probable. That means there's probably going to be
probably
an attack.
Something going to happen. And probably. We're not sure.
And you go to bigger, football or music or speaking gigs where there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and you just look at the security. It'd be easy for them to
sneak in and do something there.
It's I think that's frightening as well.
What I worry about is the actual terrorist attacks that they have foiled that they haven't told us about, and I'm sure there will be so many.
Do you think? I don't know. I think in Australia
do they have to put out a press release though?
They don't have to, but I think they like to boast about how good they've been in foiling an attack. So I think genuinely speaking, they do tell us about them, but I could be wrong. There might be some we don't know about.
Yeah, so they're things that definitely you would worry about, and you do report on so well.
Thank you. What worries you?
Well, I tend to get in these little YouTube rabbit holes, and I'll might be looking at a video of a guy, with a snake, and it's not what you think. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at snakes for hours and how they can poison you and everything like that. And then a friend of mine might say to me, oh, Hillary Clinton, she's really evil. You should see what they did in Haiti. They took all the money. The Clinton Foundation's horrible. And all of a sudden I realize they got a death list. Bill Clinton's got an illegitimate son, and all this crazy shit. And I worry about what you're saying as well. We don't have enough reputable news services, and the people who are following all these little news services that could be set up by Russia or China and funded by George Soros or these horrible globalist organizations who they have a vested interest in what is reported, can it just makes the world a scary place.
Yeah.
There's people like Alex Jones and Tommy Robinson and all these other online journalists who are getting massive followings. I do like the way that they get up and they just talk. They'll study a subject and they'll just shoot off at the mouth for about half an hour, and there might be some truth in it, and some of it might be just their right wing impression of the world. But
it can be influential.
Yeah.
Influential.
Has the Daily Telegraph changed the way that they report since all the fake news thing happened with CNN?
No, it hasn't. We have a very clear demarcation between, news stories and news copy, and then the opinion pages where you might have, both left and right columnists.
So, like a newspaper like The Australian, I'd consider that pretty left.
That's a joke, right? The Oz positions itself as centre right, but obviously its opinion pages are more right.
Opinion pages
more
are right,
conservative, but its news coverage again, is straight but centre right. And then of course on the other spectrum, The Guardian, The Herald has moved a lot further to the left. You must speak to people. They say The Herald used to be a very credible. Important paper that you couldn't not read every day, and now it's kind of it's positioned itself to be in the same space as The Guardian, and I think that hasn't been a good move for them commercially. I think they would have been better to stay in the middle.
Is CNN still fake news?
I don't think CNN. I watch a bit of CNN. I watch a bit of Fox. I watch both. You got to know what everyone's saying on both sides of the debate.
It's why I have a folder on my laptop, and it's like 20 different news services from the Daily Telegraph, the Australian, the Herald, and then it's got Alex Jones. It's got all these other crazy conspiracy theorists, and which I love. I mean, I get so deep into these conspiracy theories, like I was telling you before. Everything from 9/11 to 5G. I mean, there's thousands of websites and people reporting out there that 5G is a way to disrupt our bodies and give us cancer and all this horrible stuff that's going to happen. And sometimes I think, well, where's this coming from? Why are people writing all this stuff?
Yeah.
But so I just like to just study it all and look at it all. Yeah, I mean, there are fact checkers
for all of those
Snopes,
claims.
That website. I always go, okay. My dad's just put something on his Facebook page which looks like a crock of shit. Look on this page, it's fake. And he just put it in the comments, say, Dad, you better take this down. But I'm like, who runs that site?
Yeah.
Is that someone who wants that fake news to get out there?
Yeah.
If it isn't, or is it someone who knows it's true that pays this site that's a fact checker?
Right. It's a problem. There's too many agendas around. You just want, that's why, straight reporting is so important, but people need to get into the habit of paying for news. Otherwise they just...
Well, the Daily Telegraph ever have its own show, like a Sky News? Because I worked at radio for a long time, and I've seen radio stations now sort of transporting a lot of their shows and their information, and now it's like they get chat shows online, and televisions going across to write a lot more on their social media and putting out their stories. 9MSN, for example. Do you ever see the Daily Telegraph News Limited heading more into those areas, or have you just got your space?
News Corp has bought Sky, so it's a good idea. Maybe I can suggest it to our bosses.
Why don't you have your own show? Is exactly what I was trying to say.
But the Daily
Telegraph,
we've just started.
Answer the question.
But Miranda Devine, who's a columnist, a conservative columnist at the Daily Telegraph, she started her own radio show off our website and podcast.
Oh, nice.
So that's Monday, Tuesday,
Wednesdays.
Starting?
What are you doing?
Do you know how...
No time?
There is no time. Do you know how long it takes to investigate and report stories? It is not. You haven't written anything out for you. You're just used to speaking. No, it takes a long time to stand stories up and then to write them. It's a there's not enough time for all the stories that need
investigating. So we're not going to see you reading the 6 o'clock news or anything anytime soon?
No,
what would
not
be
anytime
your number
soon.
one goal to do? You know, obviously the political editor of the Daily Telegraph is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of things in my career, you know, from magazines to television to newspapers. I just love being a journalist. I think it's such a privilege to be in a position where you can ask the people running the country the hard questions. You can ask them anything you want and they have to answer you. You know, they have to give you an answer. Yeah. And it's just such a privilege to be in that role and to have at your very heart the interests of the public and to, you know, go as hard as you can in pursuing that.
You feel like you're doing something good for the country.
Yeah, we are most of the time.
Yes. That's good. Is there anything that we should avoid? Any news services that we don't need, that shouldn't exist, like, for example, the ABC?
I think most of the news services have their place, the credible ones. I think the online bloggers are very dangerous because they report, and I'm not going to name them, I barely even know their website names, but they report things that are not true, that are not checked. They don't care if it's defamatory. They just put it all up there, and that's extremely dangerous. Especially
when a blogger's got 2 million followers and, you know, they're a part-time Instagram model, part-time blogger, and they're not checking their facts and they're putting stuff out because, I mean, you guys have pretty strict rules as to what you can and can't say.
And we're members of the Press Council as well, which means that if there's a problem with the story, someone can make a complaint to the Press Council and it goes through a very formal process. Yeah. But I didn't even mean those type of bloggers. I think, you know, apart from
some that are
fake
trying to
cancer claims, obviously, it's been very dangerous. But I more meant, the news bloggers that are publishing, you know, wild claims of, you know, political affairs.
But that's
as
clickbait
fact.
A lot of the time, isn't it?
And it's just false, you know, and there's been no effort. They don't even care if it's true or not. Like, you know, it's quite extraordinary, just not having that commitment to the truth and to facts.
So Bill Shorten recently was trying to change some of the laws about what you could and couldn't report on. It's a story you wrote a few days ago now.
Well, he wasn't trying to change the laws. That was a column I wrote, just showing how he can use some sort of intimidatory and bullying tactics to try and shut down reporting. That's just
like Vladimir Putin.
I just felt it was my duty as a political journalist to you know, put this in the public domain so people kind of know how he operates. You? Well, yes, his office did,
The opinion polls are saying he's not so popular anymore because he was a big meanie to Sharri. No?
I don't know about that. But look, it's tough for politicians because you write, you know, some confronting stories about them. I think Turnbull as Prime Minister has been pretty good at, he doesn't like the criticism, of course, but he has never tried to stop us publishing a story. You know, I recently wrote a big front page on how he has over $1 million invested in this Bronte Capital Fund run out of Bondi Junction by a family friend of his called John Hempton. And in the fund, he bets against short selling Australian retailers like Harvey Norman, for example. Okay. And so Turnbull's personal finances are in effect
he's basically saying that Australian retail is going to go crap, which it is anyway. Everyone knows that. Which
it is, but it's not good as the prime. And there's nothing illegal, and lots of people engage in short selling. But as the Prime Minister, to be seeking to make money off the failure of Australian retailers is a really bad
He's supposed to be looking after Australian retailers, so it's in his interests for them to fail if that's the case.
So
that's ridiculous. How'd you find that out?
Well, I found it out. Took
a little bit of digging, a couple of bit of dinner party chit-chat.
Took a little while.
True? I might have to work on that. You go undercover a lot?
No, not a lot. But we did a big front page story with that. Now, what I was going to say is Turnbull would have hated that, but he doesn't pressure you not to run the story. Whereas you run, you know, a critical story in Shorten, and he tries to get it shut down with kind of, quite bullying tactics.
Yeah, so that's like what happens, you know, in Russia. You can't write a bad article, you know, otherwise you fear of getting shot.
Well, yeah, more journalists are murdered in Russia than anywhere else. So,
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Journalists, not a safe country to
So
operate.
You never want to go over there and do any stories anytime soon?
No.
Have you ever gone undercover and just sort of snuck in somewhere and not told them you're a reporter just to get the story?
I've done it a couple of times, yeah.
Hidden microphone? Oh, really? Speaking of this flower...
I did one at the universities in 2014. I was covering media round at the Australian, and I went into the media courses at Sydney University and at University of Technology, Sydney.
So this is where all the people go to learn journalism?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And recorded and took some of the lecture notes and recorded some of the lectures.
So you wanted to hear what the lecturers were saying, if they're to the left, to the right, if what newspapers and magazines they bag, what they think's good, what did they say, what did you find out?
And UTS was the worst, and it was extremely left-leaning. Our headline said it was an indoctrination of young students, which really doesn't set them up.
So they were pushing them to not be level-headed in their arguments, just to be completely left and promote safe places and all that freaky stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, they didn't talk about that, but yes, which isn't setting them up for proper training for a career in the media, because you do need to be objective. So universities got very uptight at that story, but it was good fun. But I tell you what, I thought which could have given me away is because I kind of dressed down and I kind of managed to get in there. I didn't wear any makeup.
Yeah.
But then when I turned up, see, when I was at uni, we all took notebooks in, and I walked into the class, and every single student had a laptop. I was the only person with a notebook in front of me. They were all sitting there on their laptops, and they all had Facebook.
You just looked like a poor student.
So I was just like, oh, why didn't I think that people would take a laptops to class these days? But
would you ever do anything like that again? Go undercover?
If
you're too known because you're on the project and you're on all these TV shows.
Depends. If the story warranted, I don't know. Yeah, it'd have to be an area where people didn't know who you were.
So you went into UTS and saw that they were, pushing a left agenda. Do you think that the left is becoming a little bit fascist and not listening to the right, and so we can't have balanced arguments so much?
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of the things that I read and a lot of online reporters, especially when they go out on the street, they've set the bar so low for calling people a fascist and calling people a racist. They can't say their opinion anymore.
Yeah, I think both sides of the debate are very extreme, and it's nauseating. There's too much ideology in journalism at the moment, and it's been a problem because you have more journos, going on television and commentating. So once upon a time, you wouldn't even know what a journalist's view is.
Yeah.
But now they give their opinions and on Twitter, and they're on Twitter all the time. So just think there should be, that it can get quite vicious between the two sides. I mean, some of the most high-profile people in our Australian media landscape just go at it on Twitter all day. You have Emma Alberici from the ABC and Chris Kenny from the Australian, and they just fight over Twitter.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
I bagged someone on Twitter the other day. I can't even remember who it was. It was someone who wrote for the Australian, and I just thought it was a pathetic story, and I called him out on a couple of things. My blue tick went. I had a blue tick on Twitter and it's gone.
Really?
I think it's because I slagged someone at the Australian. Anyway.
No.
But I don't know. Who cares? It's just a tick.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, it
so
is.
maybe they complain to you, or
complain
to
Twitter?
Twitter.
Maybe he's got a buddy at Twitter or something like that.
You
but
don't
I
know
don't
who
care.
it is?
I've been doing some work for Facebook anyway, and they gave me a blue tick on Instagram, so that made me feel more special.
So now you're back, and Instagram's where most people are. I don't think most Aussies are on Twitter.
No, yeah, I know. Twitter, when it first took off back in the early 2000s, I was working on Big Brother, and I had so many people following me on Twitter.
Late 2000s.
Yeah, late 2000s.
It's like 2007 or 2008
yeah, something like
or something.
And got a shitload of followers on there, but now they're just a lot of them are inactive.
Yeah.
So when I get on there, I think I'm speaking to 30,000 people because that's what the number says, but it turns out it's just my mum and a couple of my friends.
Well, it's interesting that Big Brother's viewers then were getting on Twitter. I mean, they wouldn't be...
Yeah.
They wouldn't be on Twitter now.
Well, they didn't have Instagram.
Yeah.
And Facebook was, that sort of kicked in a few years earlier. But, Facebook's a really interesting space of what's going on there at the moment.
Yeah.
And, I mean, is that something that's going to be around for a long time, do you think? I mean, it seems to me that they're trying to do a little bit of television now. I've recently worked for them hosting some shows at the Commonwealth Games. Because it's the first time ever that they've sponsored a
sporting
event.
Are they getting into dating as well? I saw Facebook's trying to launch a dating app.
Yeah,
they're kind of like 10 years behind on that one,
and
though.
like Twitch is doing really well for kids playing video games.
Yeah,
it's massive, and so they've launched their own version of that.
Yeah,
are they just like they bought Instagram, they bought WhatsApp? Are they just trying to get bigger and bigger in any competition? Just buy it up.
Well, if you think about it, they would have 3/4 of the world's population on Facebook.
1.5 billion or something ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. So if they can and fewer of the younger generation are using Facebook, they're on Instagram.
Yeah.
So if they can find another successful platform or way to kind of get that that audience, it would make sense. But I think, they have lost a lot of, I don't know if you can talk about it if you're doing some work for them, but
not at the moment. I'll be paid, it's all right.
Yeah, they've taken a huge hit. People are furious about the breaches of privacy, and now we hear today in the news there's been a similar but different problem with Google in Australia. Using our data to follow us and to see where we are. I
was talking to a guy from Google the other day, that I met at a bar coincidentally, and I was asking him about that, and he said, well, we provide a free service where people can Google stuff and they can find out what they need to know, so we need to monetize it and make money out of it, and for them to have a free service we need to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's look, I think people won't I mean, you say they won't put up with it, but people aren't shutting down their Facebook accounts. So, but people should be more aware of just how much of the data is being gathered. And it's, we've always been concerned with government taking it. But what are these social media companies doing with it, and who are they selling it to? Should
we be worried about China? I'm worried about this big island that they built in the South China Sea that they just put missiles on. I mean, the Chinese play a long-term game. They've just decided Mr. Ping, what's his name again?
Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping is...
Not that my pronunciation's any good.
So he's the supreme leader forever now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, in Australia, we have 4-year terms like in America, and there's obviously going to be, governments in holding in a holding pattern until the next government takes over and runs things. So the Chinese would see gaps in where they can just sort of take advantage of countries, and I worry about the long-term plan when they're building a military base just up the road from Australia. And the amount of intellectual property that they steal from the US and Australia and other countries, and just there's an Apple store in China. There's a few of them where it's all Apple products, but it's not Apple.
Oh, really?
How do they get away with this shit? Yeah. And there's a reason why their economy's going so well.
Yeah.
Because they're ripping us off.
Well, generally speaking, it's a tricky line to walk for Australia with China, because they're our biggest trading partner, and so much of our economic success in the future, is reliant on that partnership. But at the same time, they pose, along with Russia, but they pose the biggest threat in terms of kind of our security as well. And it's infiltration of the political process. It's the espionage. It's the South China Sea, as you point out, the militarization of some of those islands, and over the long term, I don't know whether it'll be 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, but obviously over the long term, it's that power dynamic with the United States, and that's shifting enormously. Yeah. And the US is trying to encourage Australia to muscle up more to China and to conduct freedom of navigation exercises through the South China Sea.
Just to say, hey, bad luck, this is our area too.
Yes.
Just to sort of test it a little bit.
We've always said we would reserve our right to do that, but Australia hasn't actually gone within the 12 nautical miles yet. So there's pressure on the US to do that. Many people think that might have been kind of a trade-off for Trump excluding us from those aluminium and steel increases in tariffs. So people might have think we could have given it. Government denies this, of course, but we might have given them an indication that we would be prepared to conduct a freedom of navigation exercise. But it's very tricky, the relationship with China. We've obviously, the Australian government has really pissed them off in the past year, really since the Prime Minister's comments around the Sam Dastyari scandal.
Yeah. What the hell was that guy? Is he a spy or what?
Is he a spy? No, look, he's not a spy, but he obviously...
He's sticking up for Chinese interests, and he's in the Australian Parliament.
To get money, to get donations to the Labor Party. He said...
If he did that in another country, he'd be shot.
Yeah. He's not a spy, but yes, they were taking huge amounts of money for the Labor Party from Chinese state-owned linked companies for a long period of time, and in return, yes, he was saying what China wanted him to say.
They're buying a lot. Like, I think the Kidman estate, which is one of the biggest land lots in Australia,
part of it
they own a share of that. So when Chinese, I'm not really versed in Chinese politics and how it works with China buying land in Australia, but China is a communist country. If you've got a business in China and you take it overseas, doesn't the Chinese government own a share of it? So doesn't that mean if they buy land here, the Chinese own it?
Yeah.
The Chinese government.
Exactly.
So eventually Chinese government own a big percentage of Australia. They say, bad luck, we're coming in.
Which is why there has been such a crackdown over recent years on how much property, Chinese are allowed to buy in Australia, and it goes to the Foreign Investment Review Board, and so many people. I mean, they've been like, Chinese have bought mega mansions in Sydney, done the transaction, gone through with it, and then they've had to renege on the deal because the Foreign Investment Review Board's overturned the decision. You know, they're finally, a Chinese telecommunications company, Huawei, wanted to buy the poles and wires in New South Wales when we were privatising our electricity. And at the 11th hour, the government stopped that from happening.
Oh, good. Have you read some of the shit about Huawei online?
Well, I haven't, but they then would have had access to our telecommunications.
Well,
they could have conducted
surveillance.
surveillance
Recently, where they said, they can't be buying Huawei products because they think that the Chinese, this is a massive multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
The Chinese could have listening devices.
Exactly, the surveillance.
In the mobile phones, in the Huawei dishwasher or the Huawei camera, whatever you've got.
So the last thing we would have,
about that stuff.
the last thing we would have wanted was for Huawei to own our telecommunication network. So that was blocked. But then going back further, they successfully bought the port of Darwin, which is where the US troops are based.
Right.
So that's America was understandably very concerned about that.
Yeah, they would be. Totally. Well, I mean, we've got a lot of secret US bases up that way.
Yeah.
Have you heard a lot about them? This is probably me going down the rabbit hole again. And some of those random US bases that we have in the Northern Territory, and I know that we've got something an area that Midnight Oil always sing about that's got a nuclear target on it up in the Northern Territory, Pine Gap.
Yeah, Pine Gap.
I think it is. But like, there's a few stories online about people who've been driving through the desert in South Australia or the Northern Territory, and all of a sudden there's American troops around there, and they're like, where the hell did these people come from?
Because it's very important for the US, because that's one of the only sites in Australia where there's, and I don't know how, what satellite technology they use, but there is visibility of, what's going on in North Korea. So you could see if there's, testing of their ballistic missiles or...
Maybe we'll end up getting more bases in Australia, especially if they're going to move troops out of South Korea and Japan. Maybe they'll head over this way.
Well, we've got that base that seems to have become permanent in Darwin, but because a lot of US troops have been based on Okinawa, and there was talk that perhaps they were going to bring some of them to Australia, but the government says that there's no plans for that to happen. We'll see.
Well, Sharri Markson, thank you so much for being on the show. We've had a good old chat, haven't we?
It was very wide-ranging, from Stormy Daniels to Chinese security.
It was all over the shop. But there was stuff that I really wanted to know. And you're an intelligent, amazing woman, and it was so great to be able to pick your brain on these things, because you're living it. You're there in the front lines, firing out those words for the Daily Telegraph every day as a political reporter. You do a brilliant job. And
thank you. Thanks for having me in here in your cool TV studio set.
It's so awesome. Sorry for telling everyone you're a cheer girl, but I got that from your mum, who used to babysit me when I was a kid. And were you really a cheer girl?
I was head cheerleader.
Head cheerleader. Okay,
just for 1 year at Sydney University, a long time ago. They had a gridiron team. Well, they probably still do have a gridiron team, yeah.
Okay. Do you still have the outfit, just out of curiosity?
I think I've got the pom-poms somewhere. I don't know if I've got the outfit. Got the photos.
Well, congratulations on being an auntie recently as well.
Thank you. Yeah, my sister had a little baby in New
York.
Hello,
Ricky! Hey, Ricky! If you're watching.
Very cute. Very
thank you so much for being on the show, and
Thanks,
look forward to reading your next expose in the Daily Telegraph.
Thank you so much for
having
Markson
me. On the mic. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and if you want to just listen to the show rather than watch it, just go to Spotify and iTunes. And hey, you've watched to the very end of this show, this amazing woman. Maybe you want to just chip in and help us pay for the cameras, pay for the producers, pay for something. My rent a little bit would help too. Just go to patreon.com/on the mic. Thank you for watching.